Hello, everyone. Welcome to Women Created and Called Live. Today we have episode 10. I can't believe it already. And we are going to be talking about the shoulds that keep us up at night. My name is Beth McGrain-Tran. If this is your first time joining me, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. If you are a woman who is wanting to conquer your fear of failure so that you can finally follow through with God's plan for your life, then you are in the right place. And like I said, today we're talking all about the shoulds that keep us up at night. Now, here's the thing about this word should. You will hear a lot in, sorry, I just lost my notes there. You will hear a lot from coaches that this is a word that when you find yourself thinking or saying, I should do something or they should do something, it's just a red flag. This is a place for you to actually really pay attention to what you're saying and what you're thinking. So it's actually kind of helpful because, if you notice that word, then ding, 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 it's time to pay attention. That little alarm should go off in your head. But let's talk about what these are. What exactly am I talking about with the shoulds? These are expectations that are put on you. And like I said, sometimes it could be expectations that you're putting on yourself. It could be expectations that other people are putting on you. It could also be expectations that you are putting on others. So all of these apply. I've noticed, I asked people, what are the shoulds that keep you up at night? And some of the answers that I got, in fact, many of the answers that I got, so it seems like the very first reaction was to go to, the shoulds are my to-do list. So that's a huge one for people. When you think of what you should be doing, you're thinking of your to-do list. I need to do this and this and this and this, I should be doing this and this and this and this. And it can be just tasks that you're wanting to check off your list. I would like to propose, though, that these shoulds, the ones that really cause us to lose sleep for longer than maybe one night, until we're able to check that task off the list, the ones that really cause us to lose sleep, I've noticed, are the ones that go deeper. And what I mean by that is the shoulds that are about the things like, I should be this way. I should be a better parent. I should be a better wife. I should be a better team player at work. I should be a better leader. I should be a person who isn't, who's more organized and put together. And so that's what I mean by the deeper things that they kind of eat away at us. Even, I would say, a little more than the to-do list. Although definitely, I think that the to-do list, that does wreak havoc in your brain also. But that is a topic for another day. We will definitely have to talk about that. But the ones that I'm talking about today, these shoulds, are the deeper ones that often have to do with relationships. And maybe that's a relationship with God. Maybe that's your relationship with yourself. You're not happy with the way that you have been behaving or just the way that you are being. And maybe it's relationships with others. Maybe it's with your spouse or, like I said, your family or your friends or your coworkers. So another thing I would like to propose, though, is that even though these shoulds are a really helpful sort of alarm to go off so that we pay attention to them and can really look at what those thoughts are, because really a should that I'm referring to is simply a thought, isn't it? It's a thought about yourself or a thought about others. And I would like to propose that there are bad shoulds and there are some good shoulds. So let me expand on that a little bit. I like to think of a bad should as something that is, it could be external or it could be internal, but it's very accusing. It's very condemning. And I find these to be really not very helpful. They don't help us move to a new place, a new and better place. They just cause us to stay stuck where we are. So those are the bad shoulds that, or the shoulds that I would say are bad. And like I said, they can be external or they can be internal. It could be things that other people are saying to you that you should be doing, and it could be things that you're saying to yourself. And that usually comes in the form of self-beat up. And we're going to talk a lot about that in a little bit here. Now, there can also be good shoulds. And I would say that the good shoulds are the ones that are offering you moral guidance. And so these are the kinds of things, these are the shoulds that are coming from God. These are the things that God's word has told you, what's good, what is true, what is beautiful. And these are the good shoulds. These are the things that we, again, look at them, and these are the ones we might want to choose to hang on to because they're helping you be the woman that God created and calls you to be. So that's good shoulds and bad shoulds. There is a difference. I just wanted to give a couple of examples from my own life. So, and I did in a general way. Like I said, a lot of these shoulds come from, your to-do list, or it comes from, the way that you are in your marriage. So here's an example that maybe in a marriage, I have a should that goes like, I should have a date night with my husband every week. And that is something that I did put on myself. Yes, it was at the suggestion of someone else who has this practice, and it works very nicely for them. And this is one of those, it's not a moral question, and so it's I can choose to take it or leave it kind of thing. And it's just a matter of me looking at that thought and deciding if I want to hang on to it. Now, I might decide that I want to hang on to it, but this is one that actually affects another person. And I would say even affects our whole family. It affects our kids if mom and dad are out. So this is one that takes a little bit more thought. But again, it's one that I can choose to hang on to, or I can choose to let go of it. Another example, some of the shoulds for me, I should clean my house more. That's a true one. But it's also one of these cases where I can look at it, and again, I can choose to hang on to it or not. But also, I can define the terms in the rest of that thought. If I say clean my house more, so what exactly is more? How exactly am I defining cleaning? Is that doing one task, like doing the dishes? Is that doing all of the tasks? So we can look at the individual terms inside a thought and use those to help us make our choice about whether we want to hang on to that should, and if so, in what way? How do we want to go about that? This is one of those places where I could ask myself, okay, well, what would success look like? If I was successful at cleaning my house more, what would that look like? And that involves, again, defining those terms. So that's another example. So where do these shoulds come from? As I mentioned, they're simply a thought. But here's the thing about thoughts. And I know I've mentioned this in previous episodes, but a thought, when it is practiced over and over and over again, and you accept that thought, excuse me, you accept that thought and you replay it in your head over and over again over some period of time. Maybe it's a week, maybe it's years. But the more you practice that thought, the more it becomes a belief. And so these shoulds can often come from those thoughts that have been practiced and have turned into beliefs. And this can be, in any area of our lives. Like I said, it can be in our relationships. It can also be in our faith, if you think about it, right? We have lots of thoughts about our faith, and they are practiced over and over again. That's why we say we're practicing our faith, and they become beliefs. So these shoulds are often come from thoughts that are practiced and become beliefs. Another place where these shoulds come from could be our family values. That have been passed on to us. They can also come from society or media. We might see an example of something in a movie and think, oh, maybe that's what I should be doing in my own life too. Or we might see a news story about some celebrity or somebody who's not a celebrity, and we might see something about their life, and maybe some comparison creeps in, and we think, oh, I should be doing that too. Another place where these shoulds come from is our education. Sometimes we are, the expression, I'm doing this by the book. So that is like, I have learned how to do this a certain way. There is a right way to do it. And so I should do it that way. So that can be, again, those shoulds are coming from the way that you learned something from your education. And here's an interesting one. Sometimes we create these shoulds in our mind, and we're telling ourselves, I should do this, I should be this way for the sake of other people, for the people that I love, for for the sake of my coworkers, for the sake of just other people. And again, these might be shoulds that you want to hang on to. But again, every time we hear or think or say the word should, just let that little alarm go off that this is something for you to look at and be aware of and make a conscious decision if you want to hang on to that should or not. And here's why we want to be really careful about these. Because definitely there are some shoulds that can really be very harmful. Not only are they not helpful, but some can actually be harmful too. So I just talked about where all of these shoulds come from. And there is a term in coaching called a manual. And a manual is a set of rules that you have about the way that something should be, the way that someone should act. And very often when we talk about manuals, we're talking about a set of rules that we have for another person. That person should be behaving in this way. And it's because I've decided that these are the rules for their behavior. And you can see how that could be harmful, and that could cause a lot of problems in the relationship, right? If you're setting up expectations for someone else's behavior. But these manuals, I think that very often we have manuals for ourselves also. And again, sometimes they're manuals we want to hang on to, and sometimes they are manuals that we really want to choose to let go of. Here's an example. Here's a great example. A lot of kids are just getting out of school right now. If we think about the way that we are in school, okay? And I actually just spoke with someone who just graduated from high school, and she's like, oh yeah, that's me. She has a manual or lots of shoulds for what she should be doing. And, like I should get good grades. I should get my homework in on time. I should be applying for certain colleges. I should be making money over the summer so that I can support myself next year. Just a lot of things. And I could see in talking with her that these were really kind of weighing on her shoulders. And what happens when we are not following through with this long list of rules, this manual? What happens when we don't follow through with it? Most of us start to beat ourselves up. We get these thoughts replaying in our heads like, you never follow through. Like, you're always late. Like, you're not going to get the good grades. Look, here's proof. You got a lower grade than you had planned. You didn't get an A. Here's proof. Your brain is always looking for evidence, always, and making it mean something about you. Because our brains are meaning-making machines. I wish I knew where I heard that term before, because it is so true and so fun to say. Our brains are meaning-making machines. So true. But yeah, we have these manuals, and they can create results like self-beat up. They can also create a lot of anxiety or worry. And they can also create fear about what might happen if we don't follow that manual. And think about it. This is also true for the manuals that we have for other people. We might have a fear that if that person doesn't behave in this certain way, we have a fear about what that might mean for them, but also what it might mean for us. here's an example. We'll go back to the grades idea. So if she does not get good grades, let's say that we're talking about her mother, okay? And this is not about this person specifically. This is a general example because I see this all the time for parents. And that is, a parent might have a fear that if their child does not get good grades in school, then they won't get into a good college or they won't get a good job when they are grown. And not only do they have that fear about what is in store for their child, but they also have a fear that, again, making machines, they have a fear that maybe that means that they weren't a good parent somehow. So these are some of the things that you see how these shoulds can really cause things to go deep. I mean, there is all kinds of deeper things under these shoulds that might be keeping us up at night. So what do we do about them? I've already mentioned a little bit that when we hear, say, or think the word should, alarms should go off. And this is the key. When you hear, see, or speak or think should, flag it. In your mind, your flag goes up, right? Then question it. Is it true all the time? As in it would hold up in a court of law. It's true all the time. It is a fact. And when I say true, I am talking about holding it up to God's truth. Is it true when you hold it up to what God has said about that? Let's take, for example, the parent who has fears about their child not doing well if they don't get good grades. What has God said about that? What has God said about what it means to be a good parent? Does it say? Does he say if your child doesn't get good grades, then they're a lost cause? They're not going to do so well? Nope. Nope. Anyway, that is the point. When we hear the word should, we're going to flag it, question it, hold it up to God's truth. Let's take another example, just because we so often make these shoulds mean something about ourselves. So that we'll take that same parent again. What is that mother possibly making those shoulds mean about herself? Other than being a parent, what do you think she is saying in her mind to herself about her own value, her own worth, about her as a person? She could be having all kinds of self beat up in other ways, even outside of the parenting part. And this is where it is so very important for us, again, look at, what does God say about you? What does God say about your value? What does God say about how you're created? What does he say about whether you're worthy of love? God says that you are loved, right? You are. And that is the truth. Capital T, truth. So We take these shoulds and we hold them up to truth. And then we choose. Choose whether you're going to hang on to that should or not. Now, something else that could be helpful when you're noticing these shoulds in your life, if you want to go back, you can listen to episodes 6 and 7 of Women Created and Called Live. And those were about fear and about failure. And so if you haven't heard those episodes, those could be very helpful for you. Also, related to fear, we have, I have a free ebook download that you can get, and that link will be available in the description with this episode. And as I just mentioned, the other thing of what you can do about these shoulds is to learn the truth about who you are and whose you are. This is incredibly powerful to have the equipment to be able to examine these thoughts that you're having about yourself and about others. Because you can also, in learning about who you are and whose you are, you also learn you learn about what you are called to. And there is an umbrella answer to that. Every one of us, every single one of us is called to love. And when we learn about who we are and whose we are, we have a better understanding of, number one, what that love looks like. Because it's not just any old kind of love that we are called to. We are called to be a mirror. Be a mirror, not just hold up a mirror, but be a mirror, as in with our own lives, be a mirror of God's love. You literally are just called to reflect His love to others. And when you know who you are and whose you are, and the grace that's available to you in every single moment, because that's where the supernatural charge comes in, to give you the confidence to know that you have every single thing that you need in order to be that mirror of love to others. That is what makes all of this possible. So, having that equipment, knowing that deeply in you, makes it possible for you to combat all of these thoughts that are potentially either not helpful or even harmful. All these shoulds that come up in your mind. And it's so helpful to learn how to be in the practice of taking every thought captive. So we talked about over and over in this episode about the alarms going off. Well, that's when you know to take that thought captive. And it takes a lot of practice, but you can do it, I promise. Take the thought captive, then take it to prayer, and then again, choose whether you want to hang on to that thought or not. And then you're also going to choose what's your next action. How will you respond to God's grace in that moment? You've taken this thought captive, you have held it up to His truth. You have chosen whether that is true, good, and beautiful. And now you get to choose how to respond to God's grace. God's grace is what is showing you that truth. And then the last thing is to commit to following through with your action. Because I can't even count how many times How many times do I say I'm going to do something because I have gone through all of these other steps, right? I know that it is a good action. I've taken it to prayer. I have discerned that it's a good action to do. And how many times do I not follow through? The commitment to it is not there. Now, thanks be to God, I have learned some great tools for when I see that happening in my own life. I can shift that. I can recommit because I have some tools to help me do that. I'm happy to share them with you here, and we definitely will on a future episode. But in the meantime, I just want to share with you that these old patterns can be really hard to break, especially if they have involved things like self-beat up for a very long time. Maybe you've been doing this, you've had these patterns for most of your life, for as long as you can remember. You have had these thoughts on replay of not being good enough, or, I failed again. Am I ever going to get it right? So these patterns are super hard to break. And so that's one side of the coin. Maybe you have a pattern of self-beat up. Maybe you have a pattern of the opposite, which would be operating from the shoulds that you have for other people, these manuals, as I mentioned, and you're accepting no responsibility for the results that you've created in your own life. You're putting all of the responsibility on that other person not following your manual, your list of rules for them, and they might not even be aware of these rules that you have made up in your head. So, like I said, that's sort of two sides to the same coin. You're either taking all the responsibility and beating yourself up for not following through with it, or, oh, nope, that's not my responsibility. That's all on them. They should be behaving differently. They should meet my needs. They should do this and that. So if any of this has resonated with you in this episode and you would like some additional support, please reach out to me. You can drop me an email. You can come find me on social media. I'm on Facebook and on Instagram under Women Created and Called. And let's chat about helping you break these harmful patterns that you might be starting to notice in your life. And when we break these harmful patterns, you will see the difference that it makes in your life. This is what it takes to help you be the woman that God created and calls you to be. And it makes for such a so much better life. So much better for you and for the people that you love around you. So I will see you next week. Until then, God bless you and all those that you love. Bye.